everyone, and welcome to another video from my narrowboat. The weather is cold, it is dingy, raining, it's dark, but I wanted to evoke a little bit of sunshine into the boat, a bit of happiness, hence why I've got a beautiful flower crown on today. It's also partly because I'm about to go away for a week. These flowers are much better off on my head, and then when I get back I can add them to the wreath that I showed you in my spring cleaning vlog. In this video I want to explain the wheel of the year. If you're new here, my name is Laura and I live on a 48-foot narrowboat called Maymoon. For the last 3 years I was travelling up and down the UK waterways, mostly centred around London and Hertfordshire, but I was continually travelling up until last November when I took a spot in a mooring. And on this channel I talk about all things boaty and all things witchy, because that's another really big part of my life. And if you haven't watched my video that sort of explains my relationship with that, I will leave a link, because I know it's a really big subject. If you say, you know, you're into witchcraft or anything like that, people get a little bit concerned or they don't really understand what it is that I mean by that. And it's going to mean something different to every pagan, heathen, neo-druid, witch. Like, there's so many different styles of interest or practice. Each one is specific to each person. But there are a few key ingredients that most of these practices have in common. One of those tends to be the wheel of the year, or the 8 festivals that we recognise. For me, it's not just a belief system, it's an interest. I'm really interested and curious about folklore and mythology, and ancient festivals is just something that sort of goes with that. Some of them are borrowed from here, some of them are borrowed from there. Some of them you'll be recognising because they will have been adapted and changed and borrowed into Christianity. So without further ado, let's explore the pagan wheel of the year. So the wheel of the year itself is usually presented as a cylindrical calendar, and what most of these festivals depict is the changing of the seasons. Ancient pagans weren't necessarily thought of as earth worshippers or it being a particularly nature religion. A lot of pagans had their own deities, and so it wasn't all about the earth. But the revival of paganism and the revival of the interest in sort of ancient religion seems to be very interwoven with nature, with the earth, with naturalistic folklore, as many mythologies around the world are based on the nature systems, the wind, the sun. And it makes sense that ancient religions would have these explanations for the sun, the moon, the sky, the rivers, the wind. So these festivals tend to be centered around the natural rhythms of the earth. The Wheel of the Year consists of 8 major festivals spaced evenly throughout the year, each representing a significant moment in the annual cycle. So let's begin with our first festival of the year, which is Inbal. Now, if you did watch my spring cleaning vlog, I made that around Inbal. I was spring cleaning to mark Inbal, and I made a little feast for myself, and I did mark the occasion. I really do try to mark the festivals. It's strange because obviously I'm not a Christian, but I do celebrate Christmas, and it's just kind of inbuilt. I think it's very easy to celebrate the festivals, no matter how small. I mean, even Pancake Day. It's very easy to celebrate the festivals that we are all celebrating together. It gives you a sense of community, right? So because pagan festivals aren't celebrated by that many people, even in my circles, it's very easy to sort of miss them or to not have a feeling of excitement about them because no one else is around you getting excited about them. No one's really celebrating them. So Inbal is usually celebrated around February the 1st. It runs from sunset February 1st to sunset February 2nd. Also, a side note, if you have a different pronunciation of Inbal or any of the festivals that I'm going to mention, all I can do is apologise that I'm not pronouncing them in the way that you would. Native Irish speakers, native Celtic speakers, because some of the names of the festivals come from Celtic languages, you will have a much better, a much more informed way of pronouncing things. I have obviously looked up how to pronounce things properly, but we all get things wrong, and I started becoming interested in witchcraft before the internet. Like, before I had the internet, at least. I was probably 11 when I started reading books about witchcraft. I didn't know how to say Saen because it was only written. I never heard it out loud. So in my head, I still always say Samhain. I can't undo that because of years and years of reading it and not hearing it said out loud. It is a knowledge gap, but I'm old. I didn't have the internet when I was learning about stuff like this, and some people get really annoyed that you're not pronouncing things in the way that their native language pronounces things, and some people are very gatekeepy about the festivals themselves if you're not pronouncing them right. But we're all just learning. None of us were brought up as pagans, or very, very few of us will have been brought up as pagans or with these festivals ingrained in like our family systems. I went to a C of E school. I was only taught about Christianity, so I didn't know anything about this until I started exploring it myself. So I think everyone should give everyone a little bit of leeway. That's my personal opinion on it anyway. It kind of annoys me when people get really indignant about that, because it feels like you're just trying to say, well, this is my thing and you can't have it and I know it better. It was essentially a dead religion that's had sort of a revival. None of us are doing it right, you know, and it doesn't matter. The word pagan doesn't actually specifically refer to any one group in particular. The word pagan is what Christians called those who weren't practicing Christianity, those who were practicing the old religions, the ancient religions, the religions of the countryside, those who hadn't made it into the cities yet and hadn't become sort of enlightened with Christianity. They were, you know, the heathens, the pagans. So even the Romans would call anyone who was practicing sort of ancient Greek mythology, they were referred to as the pagans. So it's not just a Celtic term. No one really has ownership on what paganism is. It's an alternative to mainstream religions. Well, that's the origin of the word anyway. It doesn't really matter what you're doing. You can have ownership over the word pagan, and whatever you're doing, as long as it's not mainstream religion, is pretty much correct. Anyway, end of that rant. So Inbal heralds the awakening of spring. It's when we first start to see the signs of the warmth and the light returning to Earth. We see the snowdrops and the daffodils and the crocus buds. The days get longer, the light gets a little bit stronger, and this festival honours the Celtic goddess Bridget. I think in Ireland and a lot of Celtic places it's still referred to as St. Bridget's Day. A lot of people make these woven crosses that are usually made from straw or rushes, and they're called a Bridget's cross. Honouring St. Bridget is one of those sort of rare occasions in the pagan wheel where pagans are borrowing something or honouring something from Christianity rather than the other way around. Bridget is a Christian saint. She was Christian saint of Kildare. It's just started raining, so you're going to have to put up with some rain sounds. So some people, even pagans, still celebrate and honour St. Bridget when they are celebrating Inbal, but Inbal is the pre-Christian tradition of this festival. But St. Bridget's Day is widely recognised in Ireland. Some people honour Bridget as a Christian saint, and some people honour her as a Celtic goddess. There's a lot of discrepancy between the origins, but either way, within the festival of Inbal, she represents purification, renewal, new beginnings, and the stirring of new life. Legend has it that Bridget walks the land bringing blessings and fertility wherever she goes. The second festival in the Wheel of the Year is Astara, and this is usually celebrated around March 21st, but it will change each year depending on the lunar calendar. Astara celebrates the spring equinox, when the night and day are of equal length, signalling the return of longer days and the awakening of the earth. It also coincides with Easter. These festivals aren't always falling around the same time, but they do tend to fall around the same time each year, and they have very similar vibes. Astara is named after the Germanic goddess Astara, who is associated with dawn, spring, new beginnings, and fertility. The tradition of the Easter Bunny is believed to have originated from stories about Easter's sacred animal, the hare. People would decorate eggs, symbolising new life and fertility. It's a time for planting seeds, honouring the balance between the light and the dark, embracing the renewal of nature. So you can really see the themes and the through lines that also reflect in Christianity. Beltane. You will probably know Beltane already as May Day, and again it's one of those rare festivals in the wheel where we get a bank holiday for May Day. Beltane is celebrated on the 1st of May, and it marks the height of spring and the beginning of warm, fertile months ahead. This joyous festival celebrates fertility, as a lot of them do, and the union of the divine masculine and feminine energies. One of the most iconic Beltane customs is the maypole dance. If you grew up in the UK, especially if you grew up in sort of Middle England countryside and went to a small village school like I did, chances are you have already done a maypole dance. But in case you're not familiar, it's basically a big pole and ribbons stream from the top of the pole. Everybody takes a ribbon and dances in between each other to weave the ribbons, which I guess is where the weaving of the energies comes from. And again, it's something that we do to this day. I love a maypole. I'm very into it. You'll probably see fetes around this time, May Day celebrations, maypoles, Morris dances. There's a lot of folklore around Beltane. Beltane marks the beginnings of summer and it celebrates the fertility of the land. The name Beltane is derived from the Celtic god Belinus, who is associated with sun, fire and fertility, hence why this is actually a fire festival. One of the things that you should be doing to mark Beltane, if you're able, is to have a fire and burn your intentions in it, or have a bonfire with friends. Beltane is a time of revelry and passion. You've probably already twigged by now. Maypole itself is a phallic symbol. Again, you get a lot of that in paganism too. The bonfires are lit to purify and protect, and couples would leap over the flames for luck. It's a great time for hand fasting celebrations, which are pagan weddings, and generally celebrating the vitality of life. I think May Day is one of the best times to have a big party. Our fourth festival is Litha, which tends to fall around June 21st. This is summer solstice. It's known as Litha, midsummer, summer solstice, and it is the longest day of the year. It's a time of abundant sunlight, vitality. We are celebrating the peak of the sun's powers, and not just the light of the world, but the light within us. During summer solstice, bonfires are lit to honour the sun, and revellers gather to dance, feast and be joyful. It's a time to bask in the sunshine, it's a time to have a picnic, it's a time to gather with people. I am in fact so jealous of people who have a birthday around this time that this year I'm moving my birthday to summer solstice, or somewhere around there. My birthday's in February. My birthday is in the cold, dark, wet, dingy days. So this year I am gonna have a summer birthday. In ancient times, these bonfires that we light during summer solstice are also to ward off evil spirits. It's also a time when the fairies are believed to be particularly active. Sorry, there's a duck on my neighbour's boat. And obviously each mythology has its own sort of fairy-like creature, and I find that really interesting. So many different cultures around the world have a mythical creature who is mischievous and up to no good. During summer solstice, people will be gathering together, they'll be dancing, they'll be listening to music, they'll be feasting. But it is also a time for acknowledging personal power, setting intentions firmly, celebrating the abundance of nature. The fifth festival in the pagan wheel of the year is Lunasa, or Lammas. This festival falls on the 1st of August and marks the first harvest. It is named after the Celtic god Lu, who is associated with skills, craftsmanship and harvesting. Lunasa is a time for giving thanks. Thanks for the first fruits of the harvest and honouring the sacrifices made to ensure continued abundance. In ancient times, people would bake bread from the first grains of the harvest, offering thanks for sustenance and prosperity. The next festival is also very much about harvest, and it's, I guess, the slightly bigger version of Lunasa or Lammas, and that's Mayborn. Mayborn is celebrated around the 21st of September and marks the autumn equinox. This is when the day and night are of equal length once again. This festival celebrates the balance between light and darkness and invites us to reflect on the cyclical nature of life. It is basically the other side of the coin to Astara, the spring equinox. Traditionally, Mayborn is a time for gathering fruits and vegetables, particularly apples, which symbolise wisdom, healing, and the mysteries of the other world, which is why it's such an important symbol for Saen too. It's a time of reflection, and I also see it as a time of starting to prepare for the autumn months. So on the boat, for instance, that's when you start thinking about giving the stove and the chimney a really good clean. Should you need to light a fire during October, I don't ever light a fire during October though. I will just be cold because I don't light my fire until the 1st of November. But even so, it's a time when you start replenishing the store cupboards with your oats and your rice and your dried goods, and just preparing for the cozier months ahead. Samhain is probably the most recognisable festival in the pagan wheel of the year. We know it as Halloween. Halloween is celebrated on the 31st of October every year and marks the end of harvest season and the beginning of winter. It's a time when the veil between the worlds is thin, allowing spirits to walk among us. Samhain is associated with death, rebirth and the cycle of life. It's a time for honouring our ancestors and acknowledging the darker parts of life. Obviously to this day we still carve pumpkins on Halloween. These are intended to ward off evil spirits. Traditionally you would also set the table for loved ones who have passed. I really like that tradition. It's not something I've actually ever done. I definitely would consider doing that this Samhain because I think that's such a lovely tradition. It's a time for storytelling, rituals and connecting with the spirit world. The final festival in the Wheel of the Year is one that we probably all know, and that's Yule. Yule is the winter solstice. Again, it's the other side of the same coin as the summer solstice or midsummer or Litha. The winter solstice tends to fall around the 21st of December, but again, it does change depending on the lunar calendar. And it is the shortest day and the longest night of the year. It marks the return of the sun and the promise of longer days ahead. Yule, or a similar festival, is celebrated in so many different folklores and mythologies. It is associated with the rebirth of the sun and the victory of light over darkness, which sounds incredibly familiar. Traditionally, you would have a Yule log which would be burned to bring warmth and good fortune, and the Yule log symbolises the returning of the light. People bring greenery into their homes and they decorate. It's a period of rest, it's a period of cooking and crafting and just gathering with loved ones, exchanging gifts. You know, it's Christmas. I will be making a longer video that goes a bit more in depth into the origins, the folklore and the way that we celebrated and can still celebrate these festivals of the pagan Wheel of the Year. So if you are interested in learning more and hearing more about them, please subscribe because those videos will be coming out as each festival approaches us. The next one will be Astara, so I'll be making an Astara video sort of mid-March. We can all celebrate together. Historically on this channel I have been talking much more about boaty things than I have about witchy things, but I think this year I will be making much more content about witchy pagan things because that's a huge interest of mine and it's an interest that only grows every year, it seems. So please let me know what you do to celebrate these festivals. Do you celebrate them at all? Which ones do you enjoy? How do you honour them? How do you mark them? Thank you again for watching another one of my videos and I will see you next week.